This is Spoiler Country, a podcast about comics, movies, whatever, but mostly comics. Enjoy.
Previously on Spoiler Country.
Yeah, it's pretty, I don't know what to say. It's
sounds ambitious.
It's a big project.
It's very, well, Scott's words were, that's fucking ambitious.
He's foul mouth. I'm the nice one. He's potty mouth over there.
Hey, welcome back to Spoiler Country. This is Kenric Regan. That is Johnny Horsley over there. Of course, we are a podcast of comics, movies, whatever we want to do. Last time we spoke about The Longbow Hunters by Mike Grell, and then we had a bonus of an interview with the creator of said comic, The Longbow Hunters by Mike Grell, with Mike Grell. And if you can follow that, you're good. You should go check that out. I think that's episode 12. And there's video of that one, and there's, the podcast of that one. We've had that one out for a while. Go check it out. But today we got something special.
We do. This is a good one.
It is an independent comic coming out of Dark Planet by a man named Stephan Franck.
Who you may not know his name, but you probably have watched or seen some things he's worked on.
That's right. Did you watch the Smurfs growing up?
I watched it. Who didn't watch Smurfs growing up?
Do you love the Iron Giant?
Who doesn't love the Iron Giant?
Okay, then if you've seen any of those two things, you've definitely seen his work or been part of his magic has touched that stuff. Yep. So he has come out with an amazing series called Silver. And how do we put this without spoiling what it's all about? Even though we're Spoiler Country, it's pretty special. We don't want to spoil it for you.
Well, I feel like by the end of our discussion on this, we're going to spoil something. So if you want nothing spoiled, stop listening in about 5 minutes. But I would describe this as a 1930s noir tale about a guy thrust into Bram Stoker's Dracula unknowingly.
Yes, this is post Dracula.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a wonderful tale. One of the nice things that Mr. Franks does really, really well is that he is the writer and the artist. And let me tell you something. When you write your whole book and present it in all black and white, you have to be an amazing artist because there's no room for fault when you do just black and white. Color hides a lot. And this book is gorgeous.
Well, the problem with a lot of black and white books is that they don't do enough, because when you have color, you can do a lot more with rendering. You can do a lot more with the color to tell your tone.
That's right.
To tell your depth of the book. The problem with color is, well, not problem, but what tells you if you have a good black and white book versus a bad black and white book is if you colorized it and it adds a ton of depth and a ton of stuff to it, then it's not going to make a good black and white book, because if your details and your depth and your dimensions of your story and your art get lost when it's not colored, you lose everything about it. The good thing about what I've noticed in this book, and I read the first 3 issues of this one, is Franks does a very good job of keeping that, using the black and white, using the shadows, using the darks, and using the tones in there to tell you where things are at and where to direct your eye to. The important part of storytelling with comics is you need to tell the reader where to focus on in each panel, what you're looking at, because you may have this giant, beautiful spread, but you should not be confused about what's the focus of that page. And in this book, there's not a single panel I would say that confused my eyes.
Yeah, his art was fantastic. I mean, I don't know how else to put it. It's just fantastic. And his character development, he brings bright characters to this story. I mean, you're laughing at their attitude and the way they present themselves, and then you're like, wow, that's really serious. And then it's such a cool design. And the first volume is all about building the team.
Yep, absolutely it is. The way I see it really is, and you can kind of tell that Stephan has that theatrical background working on some movies and animation and stuff, is these first 3 issues are very much the first third of a movie, right? It's the first arc of a movie where you introduce your main characters, you build that team, or you build that core set of characters to go into the actual story, and you kind of drop some hints of what the actual story is going to be about for the whole thing. These first 3 issues do all of that. It hits every T of what you should be doing on your first arc of a story. It's fantastic. The art is very true to this style of book. It's it's very stylistic, and it's very telling about tone of the book that you're going to be reading. There's no gray tones in the book, but there are tones. He uses tone sheets, the dots on there to distinguish tones out versus using actually gray tones, which works really well for this book. And the angles he uses, the shadows he uses, it's very theatrical. It's very much like a movie on paper.
Yeah, you can tell when you read a lot of independent books like we do, you can tell the guys that have a lot of experience in storytelling. And let's be honest, as people go, it's not everybody that just all of a sudden weaves a good story. No,
it takes time.
You can learn that over time. And as they go, it's like anything else. People crescendo and then they plateau, right? And then you get basically what you're going to get. And you can tell this guy has a lot of background and a lot of experience in storytelling, because his stuff, it just hits. It's like a drum, and he's in perfect timing of everything that happens throughout the story. It was an unknown surprise. You know what I mean? I didn't know what I was getting into. We walked into San Diego Comic-Con. He was literally the first booth I stopped at. Started talking to him, and then his assistant guy was there, and we were talking back and forth. And Mr. Franks came over, and me and him were talking back and forth. And really, he was just so engaging at that time that that's why I bought all 3 volumes at once. Now, the 3rd volume is available through Kickstarter, and I would highly suggest going there and supporting his Kickstarter campaign for this. Oh, yeah. It's amazing. And you get a compendium. Is it compendium? Am I saying that right?
Compendium.
You get a companion piece like that talks about the history of Sludge, who is one of the main characters within the story, who is the most mysterious and compelling character in all 3 books. And she's a vampire hunter.
Oh, she's awesome, man.
She's awesome. Yeah, her name is Rosalind, and so he's created another piece that you can get through the Kickstarter campaign called Rosalind, so you can get some of her backstory and have an understanding of where she's coming from. She's a really cool character. I can see her coming a very sought-after character coming down the line.
See, now he had that book at Comic-Con to buy.
He did. I wish I should have bought it.
I kind of wish you would have bought it, because after reading that first book and that section of the book, or the issue, I think it was issue 2 where they introduced her in, is just, it's done so well, because like the first like 2 pages you see her in, she doesn't talk. So I think the main character, James Finnegan, he's an interesting character. And like when they first introduce her, he's just like babbling on and on and on, and she's like, "Shut up! There's something here that's gonna kill us. Stop talking." He just babbles. And she says like almost no words after the first 2 pages. And when she finds out, she's like, "Dude, shut up." But the way he draws her and the interactions and what they're doing, it just builds her up to be this very interesting character.
Yeah. And she's a badass.
She really is. Yeah.
And James Finnegan is a master thief. And so as you're going through and he's babbling on, what's funny, as you read through, you realize he probably is aware of his surroundings better than you think.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He's not an idiot at all.
It's a fun read. I mean, I can't even, I read it twice.
Nice.
I read it once, and then like a week later, I read it again because it was just so much fun.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting volumes 2 and 3 and reading through those, because
I have them. So if you want to borrow them, I got to get my volume 1 back from you.
It's right there behind me. So if you don't want any spoilers, I will say this now, because I'm going to talk spoilers about the story now. So if you don't want now, just skip ahead about 10 minutes and whatever, but I'm going to talk some story points now. I loved how the kid, Tao, I loved how he planted him in that first chase scene as like this character, and it was done in such a way that he could have been a character that came back and became part of the story, or it could have been just a throwaway character, and something that he did would have come back later on, but he didn't have to come back. But so when I read it through it, I was like, oh, there's this kid. This is interesting. What he's telling him, it seems like he can kind of see the future, or he knows stuff, right? It was the first introduction was done that such a way that you didn't
think you were going to see him again,
right? I didn't think he was going to come back, and then by the end of the issue 3, he's joining the team. He's a part of the team, and the way his whole he's a precog, and how it works with him is he can't see his own future, but he can see he gets visions of other people's futures or whatever, and it's weaved in so organically to have this kid who can see the future into the story that. When you first start it seems like a 1930s, 40s noir thief movie where they're heist movie, they're stealing stuff. Then by the end of the story, there's vampires, there's a precog.
It's the Italian Job with vampires.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it. That's a good way to describe it.
Yeah, it's really I mean, I feel like I'm just repeating myself, but it's really fun. It's like you're reading through it and you're like, it's a bunch of thieves grifting a vampire, and it's just like, oh my god.
Well, they're going to this vampire party. That's where 3 nights for a party where they go and feast on the blood of the innocent and try and basically rob a bunch of silver from them.
Yeah, it's really there's one like the piece of jewelry that they want to rob.
Yeah, they want to get the silver dragon bars, right?
Yeah, that's what it is, the silver dragon bar. Yeah,
the Chinese government has a $23 million bounty on the silver barred dragon that the one emperor had built, which is cool. And the visual of that when he draws the panel with all those bars stacked up to build this dragon, it's freaking cool. It's awesome.
Yeah.
My only real critique for this book. Like I do have a couple of issues, not issues, but if I had to say, if you gun to my head, what would I want changed in this book? Because the one critique I have to that I would say, and I don't know if this would make it a better book or not, just the one thing I was thinking of when I was doing this is, while I love the black and white of this book, while I love the tones of this book, and I think he executed the black and white and the tones damn near perfectly for this style of book, I do wish some of the panels, especially towards the end when the vampires show up and she's fighting him, or she cuts him in half or whatever, had a little splash of red to him. I think a little emphasis on the red would have made those panels just pop so much more. And I don't know if that would have helped the story or if it would have hurt the story. Just that's what I thought about when I was reading that section of the book. It's like, man, if that was red, this would just pop in my brain right now. But yeah, so that's, I mean, if I think, because I'm a big fan of books that are black and white primarily, that use a little bit of color to emphasize certain things, which is one of the reasons why I love the movie. It's one of the reasons why I love Schindler's List so much is it's a black and white movie with the exception of two things, and it just those two things having a little bit of color on them. The little girl, and the candle flame. It makes those two things that much more powerful. They stand out and they're more powerful. Now, I'm not saying that every black and white thing needs to have something of color in it. I'm a big fan of when that does happen.
Yeah, I mean, I can kind of see what you're saying, but when you do things like that, you run the risk of being, I don't want to say stylistic, but because...
Well, gimmicky.
Yeah, gimmicky. That's the word exactly what I'm saying.
I 100% agree with that. That's why I say that, saying I don't know if it actually would have helped the story at all.
If you had, well, let's put it this way. If you had written that book, how would you have done that?
I don't think so.
Well, so then there you go.
I don't think I would have. It just, like I said, it's just what I thought of when I read that section of the book. I thought it...
And he does have color. He does have red on the cover, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he puts the color emphasis on the cover art.
Right.
Yeah. And then throughout the whole thing is black and white. But I can't stress enough. I mean, I'm a firm believer of this, and I've thought this for a long time, that if you do a book in black and white, you can really tell the difference of artists, because sometimes those guys, they don't have the money to do color, so they have to do black and white. And it's like, wow, you really should have done color, dude.
Yeah, because if your book is just a book that would have been colored black and white, people's eyes are going to get lost in your backgrounds, going to get lost in the details, because you've got to have good shadow work and good directional images with your panels. Otherwise, it becomes too... It's one of the reasons why I can never read all the old underground comics, the Fabulous Furry Freak Wars and stuff. While they're good and they're funny, there's just so much going on in black and white that it gets confusing and just... It's like sensory overload. Yeah, it's like sensory overload. Like I respect it. It's beautiful. It's like I can't focus on it. That's one reason why I never really read Mad Magazine, because there's so much going on that you can't focus on anything. It's like
But he doesn't do that. His is everything that's there needs to be there. He doesn't have an overabundance of thing to hide stuff. Sometimes you see people put a lot of people into a scene and nobody is really drawn that well, but you have so much that they think they're hiding their lack of ability for certain things.
Right. Like when some certain artists hide feet in their drawings.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. I mean, it's just the way, that's the nature of the beast, and I get it. But I don't think Mr. Frank's had those issues.
Not at all.
Yeah, his art was, I mean, it's spot on, I honestly think that, I don't know, well, his books have been coming out for a couple of years now.
Yeah.
Right? You can subscribe on his website and get them digitally as they come out. And then for the printed, you can get the trade paperback for printed.
Yeah, which is nice. And you can get them on Comixology. You can get them anywhere you buy comics, pretty much. Online.
It's kind of funny. He's doing a web comic different. He's doing a web comic the way web comics really should be done, where he has an actual comic book format that comes out, and you can download it, and you can subscribe to it, and you can get these issues as they come out, and then you can turn around and buy the trade paperback when the volumes come out. And then he does a Kickstarter to finance the trade paperback printout.
Yeah, it's called forward thinking. You do your work in a way that you can monetize it and provide it to your fans in a way they can hold in their hand if they want to, which is great. And I was just looking, I have the book in front of the book one, and because we're talking about it came out for a few years ago, I think it's worth mentioning that this book was nominated for the Russ Manning Award at Comic-Con 2014, and then it was nominated for a 2015 Geeky Award for Best Graphic Novel, which is, that's awesome. You think about you put out a graphic novel and it gets nominated for awards when it comes out, and the next year, it's pretty impressive.
Listen, that book is so intelligently written, and you could hold that up to anything that's come out in the last 5 years, and it holds up. And I mean, like, page for page, art for art, word for word, it holds up. You know what I mean? Like, if if that's the only thing you read in the last 2 years, you're doing okay.
And people need to understand, when we say the art is good and it's spot on, we're not saying, Stephan Franck is the greatest artist to do comics ever. These pages are the best ever. What we're saying is the art and the story match so beautifully that it makes the art better and it makes the writing better. That's what we're saying.
Yeah, exactly right. This guy, he just knows how to weave a story so well that when you're reading it, you get lost in the pages. You get lost in the story. And that's what I want. When I start reading a book, I want to get lost in it. I've been reading a lot of old Conans. And I got to tell you, Roy Thomas knows how to weave a web, man. It's just, you start reading it, you get lost in the story. Now, he has the luxury because these are the Conans that came out in the 1970s, Marvel, and they actually purchased the rights from the Robert E. Howard estate at $200 a book. So they had to pay $200 a book for every Marvel one that come out, right? And then they had some other licensing stuff. Well,
that's
Goodman only wanted to pay it. Yeah, well, Goodman only wanted to pay. Well, I looked it up, right? I did the math. It was $47,000 for the complete run of Conan the Barbarian.
Damn.
Martin Goodman only wanted to pay $150 a book, but Roy Thomas got so excited he wrote the letter and he put $200, and then realized, oh my God, I put $200 when I should only supposed to put $150. But Stan Lee came to his rescue and said, we really need to do these books. And so they started writing them out. Anyways, the point is they had Robert E. Howard's backstory to make these stories with, which is wonderful. So when you start reading these books, you get lost in them. And that's how I got, like, all day today, I was reading volume 1 of Conan the Barbarian, and I read the first 5 books and didn't even realize it. And it was just page after page was just turning and turning. And Stephan Franck's Silver does this. You start reading it, and all of a sudden you're at the end, and you don't want it to end. You want more of it. You want it to keep going. I hope that this gets picked up and they license it for a movie, because it'd make an amazing movie. It'd make a fun movie.
It'd be so much fun, and it's done in such a way that, like, if you're doing the movie, the storyboards are already done because it's the comic.
Yeah, it's an action horror grift. It's a grifty action horror book. It's crazy.
It's funny how you watch in a Comic-Con and end up finding a book that it was so good.
Well, because you get a lot of stuff going, and people push a lot of stuff. You don't get very many people. I don't think you get very many artists. And I say artists in the fact that he does everything from creation from beginning to end. And you don't meet a lot of guys like that. You just don't. You know what I mean? You have people that are creators that then hire writers and artists. They come up with the idea of what it is, and then they hire other people.
Right, exactly.
It's rare to have somebody that has the whole package, packages it up, and presents you with something that you go, wow. And I don't know. Any book that makes me get lost, I'm a fan of. That's it.
Yeah, I was reading it today while I read the first volume today at my daughter Tegan's gymnastics practice. She's off on the other side of the gym. I can't even see what she's doing. And I pretty much zoned out, read the whole thing. Next thing I know, it's like an hour later and I'm like, oh, it's done. I want more.
Yeah, but you have the luxury of you still get volume 2 and 3 to read.
I know. I have to wait because I have to get them from you, but it was so good.
So there you guys go. That's a really good review of that book, I think. You need to get out there. You need to check it out. Grifting Vampires. I don't know how else you can get anything better than that.
Well, here's a question for you. What kind of person would you say should read this book? Like, what if you like these kind of stories, they should read this book? What would you say?
I think this crosses some boundaries. So I'm going to say this. If you were a 12, 13-year-old girl and you loved Twilight when it came out, you should read this book. If you are a 30-year-old man that loved The Italian Job and loved Van Helsing, you should read this book.
It's a pretty broad spectrum there, but yeah.
It is a broad spectrum, but I think that it appeals to both those categories. I think it appeals to those people. I think if you really love Twilight, even though it's not romantic like Twilight or anything like that, but the story of Sludge, I think that'll cross over. And you know what? I'm gonna put a prediction out here. If he keeps this going, right, then I'm really hopeful that he does a Kickstarter for Volume 4, and he keeps this going. I can see Sludge being a really big hit of a character.
Think so?
Yeah, dude, I could see her, if she's marketed right and she comes out, I can honestly see her being like a Death from Sandman. You and I remember Death from Sandman, right? Yeah. There's a whole legion of kids that are reading comic books now that don't know who she is or what she was or what she meant. But like in 1988, 1989, you couldn't get away from that character. She was all over the place. When you walked into a comic book store, you saw shirts, you saw the people wearing Ankhs. You knew if you saw a kid wearing Ankh that he was a Sandman fan.
Oh yeah, and it was still a big deal when I was in high school in the late 90s, and even when I was in college. Death was still a big deal. She was still everywhere.
Yeah, she's still a very much of a cult character. I can just see that Sludge being a character like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I can see people getting into her that way.
Well, this book is primed for a movie, right? It's primed to be a movie, and if it does, you've got you got a movie right there, and the main story is Silver, but then you've also got an offshoot movie in her that you can easily make, and you've easily got a franchise right there, and just that.
Live action or animated. It would translate both to either one.
I think so. I'd watch either one. I mean, I thought it was really good.
If you're a fan of Underworld, you should read this book.
Yeah, because you find that you get it because it's better.
Yeah, it's better.
I mean, Underworld's entertaining, but as far as story goes, this is way better than Underworld.
Oh yeah, just tighter. Just everything's tight in this book, man.
Yeah.
That's what I mean when I say it's like a drum, man. It just hits the beat every time. You know what I mean? There's not a lot of holes when you're reading it, and you're just like, what's going to happen next? What's going to happen next? What's going to happen next? And it surprises you. Wait till you get through volume 3. You're going to be like, what? I don't know how else to say it. You're just going to be like, I can't believe this is all that happened so far. And that's why I'm excited. I'm hoping that, I mean, he could end it with volume 3 and that completes the arc.
Right.
But he could definitely move on with with that team or with other people, I should say. I don't know who else should read that book.
I think that if you liked Buffy, you like this.
Oh yeah, if you like Buffy, definitely read this book.
Yeah, I mean it's not the female character is not the main protagonist of the book. However, it doesn't matter. Like it's written very well. It's done in a style that I think a lot of people, if they like suspense, they like stories that have a little bit of twist to them, that have compelling characters to them, they'll enjoy this. Yeah,
definitely. It's really good. So that's our review. Go read this book. Obviously, we both love it. I mean, you're going to find that we love a lot. You know, if we're having people on to talk about the book, most likely we're going to love the book because we don't want to have an uncomfortable conversation.
Right.
But read Silver. Check out the Kickstarter. Stephan Franck's STEPHANFRANCKS. The book is Silver. Just put in those 3 things and you'll find it'll come right up.
There'll be a link in the description of the episode to his website so you can look at it and buy it if you want to.
And without further ado, here's our interview with Stephan Franck.
Okay, we're here with Stephan Franck of Dark Planet Comics. He has an amazing triple volume series out right now called Silver. And Stephan, we got to tell you, we already did a review and people will hear it before we actually come on here. We both gushed over it. We loved it.
Oh, thanks, man. That's I don't know what to say. That's awesome.
No, we really did, man. We really liked it. I think Sludge is she's such a unique character. And like just the name alone is like, what? Who calls a girl vampire hunter Sludge? I mean, that was awesome.
She's so badass though. She's so cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. I actually equated her. I told Johnny in the review that I think she could be a character that people resonate with like they did with Neil Gaiman's Sandman, the character of death. And because I remember in the 80s when that came out, I didn't read the Sandman series until just this year, which is kind of crazy. But because I collected comics like crazy in the 80s. But I remember everybody being into that particular character more than Sandman himself. So I really loved it. I thought it was cool.
Dude, thank you so much. No, you know what's really, really fun for me is there's the reason why I love doing the cons is because it's the one setting where you really meet the readers and you can really get like a one-on-one report on what they connected with or didn't. And Sledge, who's, as you know, her real name is Rosalind Van Helsing. She's definitely one of the characters that people really connected with. I just find it wonderful. For me, I always love doing female characters. I have 2 daughters. Was raised by a single mom, etc. So I feel like because there's such a trope of the what I call the bimbo with the sword kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And Sledge is so not that. Or at least that's what I'm trying to do.
She don't take no shit.
Right.
You know what? Someone tell me, like a reader told me one time. She said, I work in customer service, and I talk to like rude people all day, and she's like, I live through her.
That's awesome.
She's like. Yeah, so there was no higher praise for me. It was awesome.
You know what? I like that you like a strong female lead like that because my dad died when I was 15. So all through my teenage years, it was my mom. And then I had 2 sisters that were very strong women. And so that's all I had in my life was a lot of strong women influences. So I like those kind of characters, not because I don't want to pick on any one book, but you know, some of the books that came out, especially in the 90s, which I kind of feel like is a throwaway decade when it comes to good storylines. There was a ton of female characters created that was all about boobs and ass, and that's it.
Right.
And there was no actual filler there, nothing that was like fun to read. And
Well, there's no depth to those characters. Those characters,
Exactly.
at least for the 90s, were so one-dimensional. They were so just throwaway characters that some of them end up becoming better characters, you know, 10, 15 years later. But in the 90s, they were just there for, you know, wearing skimpy costumes and showing cleavage and ass.
right.
Yeah,
Well, once the writers got on there.
And you know, I think it's not just comics. I think it's society in general that's changed a lot. I wrote the script for Silver a while ago, and the idea of it had been I had for a long time, and some of the scenes I could and some of the as I started actually doing the book and really like this is when the characters come alive and they kind of tell you who they are and what they want to do and stuff like that. And it sounds like a cliche, but it's true. They kind of take a life on their own, and a voice on their own. And some of the stuff I had, I was thinking of for Sledge, I was like, oh my God, did I write? No, this is not her. This is not right. So it's just like, and stuff that ideas I had maybe 10 years ago, and now I'm like, I feel like there's an evolution, and I just, for me as a person, I don't know, it's maybe seeing my daughters grow up or whatever, but it's true that, and even, it's interesting because it's in story and it's in drawing also, like for instance, just last year I was doing this super large piece for, it was a marketing piece for Germany, basically, but it was like a giant illustration with all the characters. I don't know if you've seen it. It was Dracula in the middle with the two swords, and there's like everybody in there.
Oh yeah. I've seen it online.
Yes, and so like I thought I was done at some point, and I looked at Sledge. I was like, wait a second, this is just not right. And she because the thing is that when you're drawing, part of you is telling, I mean, it should all be about story, but drawing there, there's an aesthetic thing that sometimes you're trying to push, and you're always trying to push a pose and stuff like that. And then it's very easy, to push the pose into just pure like, exploitation. And you go like,
right.
Wait, this is not Sledge. This is like a swimsuit model. Nothing against swimsuit models, but that's not the character, right? But it's not the character,
Yeah.
And so sometimes like, you have to catch yourself and go like, because to me the thing is like always looking for the truth of the character, the truth of the moment, the truth of the, in the drawing, and sometimes it's a hard path to stay on.
I like that you're equating it that way with saying, hey, I've made this character. She's making these type of choices. This is how I want her to go, and now I've put her in these positions that's not her. That doesn't make any sense. So I'm going to redo this.
Right.
That's cool. When you're going through, you're talking about aesthetics, which I really love because your art style is really neat. And I love the fact that you made everything black and white the way you did, because the work of negative spaces and the fact that I feel when somebody does everything in black and white like you did, color, I think, can mask things that you don't want to be there, that you couldn't help, can mask mistakes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And your lines were just... I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm totally kissing your ass, you know what I mean? But your lines were really freaking awesome, dude. Your lines were really awesome.
Thank you.
It was just a
keep
fun...
keep talking.
Put it this way. We went to SDCC. That's where we met you, right?
Yeah.
And we were literally the second people into that area, into the con.
Right.
And when we walked in the doors, for our doorway, and we walked in, it was right on your aisleway, and I went straight to you, and I didn't even know who you were. I had never heard of Silver at all, and then you and I started talking, and you had a kid working with you. I'm not too sure. He was very nice.
Right.
And after talking to you, going through the books, I bought all 3 volumes. I wasn't even at the freaking con for 20 minutes, and I bought all 3 of your volumes.
Oh, that's awesome.
And you should have bought Rosalind too.
I know. That's the only thing. I regretted not picking up Rosalind. It was like, God dang it. Because after reading all 3, I was like, God dang it. I got to read this. We got lucky. We didn't have to get a hotel. We had a buddy that has a house in downtown San Diego, and we got to stay with him.
That's cool.
So we went home, and I'm sitting on the couch. It's like 11 o'clock at night, and every night Johnny and I we had a routine. We'd get up in the morning. We'd talk about what we want to do at the con on our podcast, right? We would record. Then we go, we do all this stuff. Then we'd come home, and then we talk about what we did, and then we compare it. Well, we go and we do that first day, and then we go home, come back, and we say, these are the books we got, can't wait to read Silver. Sit down, and no joke, that first volume I read within, an hour. I couldn't put it down. It was just like,
cool.
I just kept reading, and it was just like, holy shit, I'm done. And I made it through the first volume and a half, the first night I even knew what that book was. And I'm looking at Johnny, I said, dude, you got to read these. We have to do a review of these books because they're too much fun. I mean, the way you set up your characters, I want to say I don't want to say it's like the Italian Job, but I'm kind of think of what movie.
It's not about. Well, I mean, like some people say it's like Ocean's 11 in Dracula's castle.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. I like that because it's like, here are my characters, and you set up everybody's character. This is what they do. This is who they are. This is how they are. Then you have your main antagonist going through, introducing everybody, going through everything, and you think at the end that they're fucked, and then you realize, oh my God, he conned us the whole time you're reading this book, and I loved it. I was like, I can't. When I read it and I was going through, I was like, he made this. This is a shot for shot movie. It's ready to go.
Right.
Just give it to the director. Just give him that book and say, here you go.
Just do that.
Yeah, just do that.
Dude, okay, first, thank you so much for all the kind words. I really, really appreciate it.
Oh, it's true.
But also, so just to rebel on some of the stuff you mentioned, I'm really glad that you picked up the con aspect to the, of the story, because it is about a con, but, it's the form. And I really wanted, everything in the book is a con. There's cons on the reader, there's cons on the characters. It's just like, I just wanted to, to keep you guessing the entire time. And I think that what I feel
mission
is
accomplished.
Like right, thank you. It's just like it's that line where you don't want people to go like I give up. No, you want them to keep guessing and keep guessing and keep guessing, but they're guessing wrong every time. So I think that's like the form that I'm trying to connect with, and it's really fun. It's really fun to do.
Well, I'm trying not to give anything away because it's so hard not to, because you can't talk too much about it because you give the story away. But volume 3 got me, dude. Totally got me. I was like, this is going into volume. This is going to get me. I mean, I thought I had it figured out. And then at the end, I was like, are you kidding me?
Well, all I have to say is wait until volume 4. Wait for volume 4.
Yeah, I'm excited. I was glad to hear that you had a Kickstarter going, and because we're going to be going out on Kickstarter and donating to that for sure.
So wait, so just to so your listeners know, so the Kickstarter was to help with the printing of volume 3 in Rosalind. We do it slightly different than other people do, which was we don't do Kickstarters, as we start the books. By the time we do the Kickstarter, the books are ready to go to the printer. And
awesome.
So it's very, very quick turnaround for people, and just literally within weeks you get your books, and it's really a way it's the energy of the readers and the fan base, and we're all making this thing happen together, which is I think is really fantastic.
Yeah, it's very cool.
All molding on reality, culturally speaking, but. So the Kickstarter now for Volume 3 and Rosalind is closed. Things are being shipped as we speak, and so but we will put Volume 3 and Silver Volume 3 and Rosalind on the Dark Planet website as soon as all the backers have their books.
Oh, that's perfect. Yeah, I saw you signing all those volumes. It was
that was a cool video. I saw that video.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a cool way to do it.
I did the comment saying it should have been Benny Hill music to it.
Right.
I know. It was just like, this is like the least funny Benny Hill skit ever, right?
But it was a lot. How many books did you sign?
Well, it's with the add-ons and stuff, it's over 600 books that were ordered through the Kickstarter.
Wow.
That's awesome. That's really cool.
Yeah.
It's really fun.
out of the two of us, I have no artistic ability. I tend to do all the talking because I'm a chatterbox, but Johnny is the artist. He's actually working on a volume called the Ein's Anthology. And what he did is really cool. He took a family, he created a family, right? And he did a background for 600 years worth of this family. And they all get dealt in with the supernatural, right? So you have some of the family's good, some of the family's evil, some of the family are mercenaries or bounty hunters or whatever, but they all deal within the supernatural and the occult, and the supernatural tends to follow them no matter where they go. And so he's got it going back from like, I want to say the 1500s, right, Johnny, all the way up to like the 23rd century.
The first character starts in 1500s, and the first story is in like 1504, and the last story takes place in 2113. So it's all throughout that whole storyline or timeline.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he created this whole thing, and then he put out a call to action, and he got 25 writers from all over the world to submit stories based on this family, and then he's doing all the art.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
You know, I love the generational aspects, you know, to stories, you know, like, because I think I think there's a case to be made that every story ever told is about one thing, which is that your forefathers, and I'm saying forefathers because we're in a patriarchal society, but, you know, it could be mothers, whatever, but, you know, the people who came before you either committed, you know, achieved greatness or terrible sins, or both, you know, and then the whole point of your life is how do you live up to the greatness or live down the sins, and where do you stack up? And I think every story is about that when you think about it, you know, from The Godfather to like you know, anything, Star Wars, of course, but even more realistic movies, you know, in a way, it's all about that, you know, and so I think that's fascinating. It's just like what mystery lies inside of you that's inherited from your, you know, where you come from. I mean, I think that's all.
Right.
It couldn't be a more universal story. I think it's amazing.
What's in your DNA sequence that's making you make the decisions you're making?
Yeah,
is it fight or flight?
It's fight or flight, or is it, you know, and that's, you know, and families, you know, have weaker generations, stronger generations, you know, morally, you know, positioned differently. I think it's that's why people love Star Wars so much, and Game of Thrones even, you know, that's what it is. You know, it's about how you know, the human experience is this continuous thing that, you know, goes on, and you're a link in the chain, and are you a weak link, a strong link, you know, what is it, you know?
Yeah, and you look back at what your past family has done to build strength for what you need to do in the future.
Right.
And that's so it's a cool concept. And how long you been working on that now, Johnny?
A little over a year, but yeah, the whole concept was I wanted to tell snapshots of family in a timeline that are all connected, but not, they're not directly connected, but they're all connected because it's all the same family. So you see things that happen in, you know, one storyline kind of resonate to a different storyline, but it's all, you know, throughout time. So it's going to be a fun project. It's a lot of work though, because it's like 150 pages with 25 different writers. So each writer has a different tone that I have to try and match the art to, which is kind of what I wanted to do. I wanted to like give myself a really big challenge art wise.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you started on the art already, or?
I have, yeah. So I've finished inks on one story so far. Each story is 4 to 8 pages. So I finished the inks on one story, and I've roughed out, I think, 7 more stories. Just roughed out the layouts for them. That I'll then start working on those. I still have to do coloring and grayscaling on on the first one, but you know, I've got at least one of them done to inks.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
It was a lot of staging too, right? Because you had to interview and then accept a bunch of different writers, and they're from all over the world. So the worldview that's going to come out of those stories is going to be very unique, which I'm excited for.
I had to weed through over 250 different writers' applications to that wanted to be a part of this, and we had to weed it down to 25.
That's amazing. Like I mean, you know, there's going to be a richness of point of views in there. It's going to be really amazing.
Yeah,
that's what I wanted.
Yeah, because he's got every walk of life. He's got, you know, he's got gay people, he's got straight people, he's got people from England and Chile and Australia and, you know,
Nigeria,
from all over
South America. Yeah, and men, women. It's going to be great. I wanted to get the most eclectic group of people I could to write stories in this book, because that's what I've got.
That's an amazing concept. It's really, really cool.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Hopefully it's as cool in the end as it is in my head now.
It will be, man. It will be. So every time we have somebody on that has done a bunch of stuff like what you've been doing, and we had Kevin Joseph on of Tart. I don't know if you know that book, but that guy, that's really good. He has, his artist name is Luda. Is that right, Johnny?
Ludo. It's longer than that, but he goes by
Ludo.
Ludo out of France.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And he's got
Let's
some
check him
really
out,
cool
yeah.
stuff. His art, I don't. Kevin had never heard of this. I don't know if you have either. But you remember Baskin Bass?
Oh,
Rankin and Bass?
Ranking and Bass. Yeah, the
Yeah,
animation,
Rankin and Bass.
stop motion stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you ever see their movie American Pop?
No, that's Bakshi, Ralph Bakshi.
That's Bakshi. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
His art style kind of reminded me of that.
Oh, that's cool.
The coloring, all that kind of
Kind
stuff.
of
Not so much.
psychedelic, kind of very acid kind of feel. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, he has this whole thing where so the main character's name is Tart, and you think that shit's going to be, when you see the marketing of it, you almost think it's going to be highly sexualized teenager, but it's not. And then when you start reading it, you're like, oh, she's basically a demon hunter that goes through time and the universe to hunt everything down.
That's awesome.
And then there's some other things going on. Yeah, it's a really fun read. It's called Tart from Catchall Comics, Kechal comics.com. You should,
have to check
if you
it
get a
out.
chance, you should check it
Yeah,
out. Yeah, you should
definitely.
check it out.
He was actually in the aisle in front of you, like across the way.
Yeah, he was one aisle over from you.
At San Diego.
Huh. And you're
Yeah.
saying he's a French artist?
The artist is French. The writer is from Florida. Yeah.
Oh,
Yep.
got it.
Yeah. And it's a really fun read. But one of the things is like one of the ways that she can go to different dimensions is she finds these guys with overcoats, and they open up the overcoat, and it's all like the universe inside their overcoat, and she jumps inside
That's
of it.
awesome. It's like an old
Yeah.
Ditko kind of
Yeah.
drawing. You know what I mean? Like
very-
Mr. Universe kind of. Like that's.
Yeah.
I love it.
like Mr. Universe, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, it's really cool. You should check it out. Tart. You've done some work in animation.
Oh yeah.
And one of the things that kind of got me when I was talking with you at SDCC is the fact that you worked on the Iron Giant. And I got to tell you, I'm a huge animation fan from way back, right? I mean, I watched Star Blazers when they first came to America. That was it. Once I saw Star Blazers, then it was G.I. Joe, Transformers and everything else. And then I got into Akira because the Japanese stuff started coming over, and I saw Akira and I saw Ghost in the Shell and everything else that started. And I was just like, oh, I feel like I'm 43 and I got lucky, right? I think I grew up in a time where a lot of cool stuff came out back to back to back to back to back.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you something about Akira, right? Real quick is so yes, I do work in animation. I've done a lot of animation, still in animation now too, as well as comics. And so in France, there's this town called Annecy that has the Annecy Festival. It's every year now, but back then it was every 2 years. And so it's like in the Alps. It's this like lovely, amazing medieval village, right? And they have the biggest animation festival in the world.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so as a student, you'd go there, and I was not even, I think, in college yet. I was just, and so it was in 1987. So yeah, I guess I was, whatever. And so anime had not really come to Europe yet. I mean, it had like the very early anime, like 60s, we didn't have Speed Racer or anything like that, but things of that sort of level of intensity, and everything, it felt very short-handed as a to European eyes at the time. And so I'd never, seen definitely any anime feature or anything like that. And then I see this thing called Akira, and I was confused. I don't know what it is. So I go into the screening, right? And on the biggest screen they had, which is this giant screen, and dude, this thing hits me like 100 miles an hour. It's in Japanese, subtitled in English, and I was just like, what the hell is? And like the minute the bikes were racing and stuff and the way they were using
that motorcycle scene, man, that hit me, yeah.
And this thing, and that's the thing with Otomo, and I'm sure you've seen Steam Boy also, but the thing about his work is that it's all, I mean, Steam Boy has some CG in it, but it's basically 2D animation, but man, the way he's describing the space and movement, and it's visceral. You're like, you're just getting the physical sensations. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it's always
Yeah.
drawings. And when I saw that, I just couldn't believe it. And not to mention that the filmmaking was so state of the art as you have in live action at the time, right? As opposed to the very sort of minimalist film language that was used that far, in Western, feature animation.
Yeah.
Where you have basically like 5 shots always the same, and it's just the animation does its thing. It's great, but dude, that thing was just a movie with a capital M, and it just like it killed me.
That's an amazing movie.
Yeah, the first time I watched it, I was sitting in my downstairs basement, sitting on my couch, watching this movie, and I couldn't turn away. You know what I mean? I was just like, couldn't turn away. And then and I had gone down to the video store. It was called AIM Super Video, and the guy that ran it there was, you got to watch this. It's amazing. Let me know what you think. And I get home and I pop it in, and I watched it like 3 times within 3 days because the first time I watched it, I didn't understand what the hell was going on.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It was beyond me. I was like, I'm too dumb for this movie.
I did the same thing.
I felt dumb watching that movie. I was like,
Well, let me ask you. So when you saw it, was it dubbed in English or was it with the subtitles and the?
it was subtitled. It was subtitled.
Because the Japanese language is already so intense, sounds so intense to Western ears that they totally added to the, like, everybody's yelling at everybody and they're like, it's just like, and the bear and so I don't know, man. I thought this was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen. Completely blew my mind.
Yeah, I saw it in college and I wasn't ready for it. Like, before I watched that one, I had watched Cowboy
wasn't
Bebop.
ready for
I
it.
wasn't, because I'd watched Bebop and I'd watched Trigun and stuff like that in high school and college. And then my girlfriend at the time was like, here, we have to watch Akira. And I'm like, I've seen the comics. I haven't read them, though. And so we sat down and watched it. And it got done. And I was like, I got to watch that again.
Yeah.
We watched it back to back the first night we watched it.
Yeah.
The other one that did that to me was Ghost in the Shell. The first time I watched that, I was running a Hollywood Video. This is 1995. And that came out. And I watched it. And I made every single one of my friends and both my sisters and my brother watch that movie. And my oldest sister, fought me on it. She's like, I don't want to watch it. It's a cartoon. I'm not interested. I'm like, no, you have to watch this movie because it's not just a cartoon. That thing is written so well. That is a movie. That's not you're not watching Disney. You're watching a serious movie. And then she came back. She was like, this is amazing. Do you have any other things that is in this vein? And then I made her watch Akira, and she liked that one too.
Yeah.
And then she watched Vampire Hunter D, and she loved that one, which was kind of
I
funny.
loved Vampire Hunter when it came out, when I first watched it.
Oh yeah, it was a great one.
That one and
that whole the concept of the hand.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it was awesome. I wish they do more.
Oh my god, yeah. So I'll tell you, like the movie that destroyed me the most, like all things considered. I mean, like was Grave of the Fireflies.
Oh.
You watch that movie and it's the
That's
most.
just a beautiful movie.
Oh my god! But it just destroys your soul, right?
Yeah.
Completely. Like there's no, and so that's when you realize that animation is limitless in its what it can tell. What kind of stories it can tell and how emotional and effective and affecting it can be. I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah. Well, it just shows. What was the guy's name that made that movie?
So
that,
I don't know. I would have to look it up.
Grave of the Fireflies?
Yeah.
Well,
wasn't that the same guy that did Spirited Away?
No, Spirited Away
no.
was. Well, it was by. It's animated by Studio
You're
Ghibli, but
thinking
it's written by
Yeah, I'm thinking of
Takahata.
Miyazaki. Yeah, Takahata.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It was animated by Studio
but
Ghibli.
that was a beautiful movie. Oh. Yeah, Stephan, I'm so glad you came on because I could talk about anime like that all day long. I loved it because I felt like, because of my age group, a lot of the people that I knew weren't into it, right?
Right.
And so I felt kind of like an outsider when I wanted to watch cartoons,
No,
because I loved. I don't know if you ever watched Star Blazers or Farewell to Spaceship Yamamoto.
Nope.
So those were imported from Japan. Then they were dubbed in English. That's the only way I ever watched them was dubbed in English.
Right.
And they came over in the late 70s. And there's like 3 seasons. And they'd play it in the morning. And they cut out the death scenes. But that was it. Right? And it's just about the planet Earth has been bombed by this other species, and they have sent meteorites, and they're just keep bombing Earth with meteorites, and they're killing it. And so they take up the Japanese warship, the Yamamoto, and they re-outfit it as a spaceship. And this other alien planet sends plans on how to make the gun and how to make the engine and how to redo everything. And then they go through space on the battleship Yamamoto, which is funny to say, but man, that show really got me, and that's what made me want to watch other things. And then that's what made me open to see, Akira and Ghost in the Shell and Vampire Hunter D, because it was really good. I mean, especially for the 70s, it was better, because I wasn't a Speed Racer fan. I didn't like that stop animation kind of style. It bugged me. And this one it had some stop animation, but it was more fluid. They did, and I think they did. I think you called about it before, where they had like the same scene and they would just play it in succession.
Right, exactly. Yeah. No. I mean, they were definitely making those. Because I grew up in France, right? And so we didn't have Speed Racer, we didn't have Astro Boy, but we had.
That's a good one. Astro Boy.
What is it called? Grandizer.
No, I don't know that one.
It's like one of the. It's really funny because it's like everywhere else like here in the States or maybe in Japan, it's like considered like a lesser of the robots, like a Mazinger, like he's.
Oh, okay.
But in France, it's like it turned an entire generation onto anime, But it was still like, I'm gonna say late 60s, early 70s, probably early 70s work, and very low production budgets. And a lot of reuse, of the scenes and stuff like that. But yeah, when they did those features, then it was a completely different production value, and it was just a different level,
That's awesome. Would you think of making Silver into that kind of animated movie like that?
It could. Well, the thing is, right now there is a. My PR guy always said, don't make announcements. I'm not going to say anything. But I'm just going to say there's efforts underway right now towards a live-action movie. So
just tell me where to send all my money. That's all I need to know.
I'll watch that in an instant. So just say it. I'll be first.
Take all my monies, because that would be amazing. That's all I'm going to say.
Thank you.
So what was it like working on The Iron Giant? Because that's one of mine and Johnny's favorite family animated movies to watch. Like, we'll sit down. I think he sits down with his kids and they'll put that on. Yeah. I know I'll sit down with Tafine and Ella and we'll put that on, and that's just a fun one to watch.
Yeah, I mean, it was an amazing experience. What was really interesting is that, and I guess like the previous part of our conversation alludes to that, which is that I fell in love with comics and animation, both as mediums, and I ended up professionally first going into animation, and I've been there for a long time, That's awesome. And because, I absolutely love the art form, but it's true that a lot of the films that, we were making, or, let me put it this way, like, animation to me is a medium. It's an art form. It's not a genre, right?
Yeah.
And so way too often, it's a little bit different now, but, for a long time, like in the early years of my career, what all the studios wanted to do was a very tropey sort of, everything, it's, what you used to read in Variety, oh, this is crime, this is science fiction, this is animation. Well, what does that mean? Well, it means they're going to be stupid sidekick singing songs and,
right.
And, there was this wink and nudge every 2 seconds. So there was an affectation and a fakeness to a lot of the movies that, not all the movies had, and some, movies were great, but they were animated movies in a way that was not appealing to me, because again, I saw it as an affectation and a limitation.
Very formulated.
Right. And exactly. And so kind of dumbed down. I mean, there's no other way to say it. They were, everything had to be dumbed down because they thought that's what, the people wanted, And so when So the way I get involved with the Iron Giant is I was working at Warner Brothers, and Brad started to invite the animators from other movies we were finishing, to screenings to kind of just introduce the movie to us and stuff. And so I get called into this meeting, and I didn't know who Brad really was. I just knew he was a guy from The Simpsons, and which I love The Simpsons, but also I was like, are we going to do TV animation? Is it going to be a feature? What is this? Because there were a lot of rumors that he wanted to work like people work in TV animation, which is a different process, and obviously less heavy on the performance and whatever, right? So I had no idea. It's like one of those things where you're sitting in a movie theater and you have no idea what you're gonna see, and then the story reels starts to play, the first act, and I'm like, oh my god, this is the movie I've been waiting for all my life. This is the movie. This is a movie I would love in any situation, and it just happens to be animated. So it's just like,
that's awesome.
I was completely blown away. And then Brad called me to a meeting because he had liked some scenes I had done on another movie and stuff. So he introduced himself, and I tell him a story. I go like, Brad, this may sound a little weird, but when I was 13 years old, I was cursing your name. And he was like, what the fuck are you talking about? And I was just like, well, so here's the thing, is that, I started doing, animation very early as a kid. And when I was 13 years old, I saw the movie Heavy Metal. And yeah, right. And that's what really like sealed the deal for me. It's like, okay, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. So since I also love comics, I was just like, okay, I got to get started. And what I'm going to do an adaptation of Will Eisner's Spirit.
Oh, nice.
Right? And so I'm going to make this film. So there, I'm 13 years old. I tell my mom, hey, we need to go buy some cells. I go to the hardware store. I build like a multi-plane, camera stand in my bedroom and shit. Yeah. And so, and I'm like, for like 2-3 years, I'm like,
passion. I love this.
It's yeah. And so I'm making my movie, The Spirit by Will Eisner, and so. And then, of course, it was pre-internet days, not even close to internet. And so whenever you needed like information, like for me, I had to like schlep, 20 minutes to the public library and hope they had a book that whatever, right? And so I go to the public library and I found this one French magazine on animation that was coming out like one issue literally once in a blue moon. I want to say there was no rhyme or reason. There would like 8 months would go by, and anyways, and so I get this thing. And in other news, in development, this guy called Brad Bird is developing a movie of, I'm talking 1981 or something. Right. Brad Bird and Gary Kurtz are developing an an animated adaptation of The Spirit by Will Eisner. And I'm like, who the fuck is that guy? I'm yelling in the public library like, that's my movie, you motherfucker! Right, so I'm like, duh! And like 15 years later or whatever, I'm like, hey, funny story. I finished my movie and you never made yours. No, so and so we laughed and everything was cool. And so no, it was amazing. So, but see, I was not surprised that when I saw his movie, the Iron Giant, which is he had been chomping in the bit for a while to make a feature because he had been working on a lot of really cool TV shows like King of the Hill, Simpsons, all that stuff. But he was really, he really wanted to get into features, and so I was not surprised to love what he was doing so much because I can see we're coming from the same inspiration, But and then of course he's a wonderful director, and so I feel like I learned so much from him on many levels. Gave me a lot of great advice that I never actually didn't follow, that I should have followed, but whatever. But
you got to pave your own path sometimes, though.
Yeah, exactly. No, it was amazing. But the thing that was the most amazing to me and that I kept is the unaffectedness of how he approached animation. Because in animation, it's the same as what I was talking about drawing, women. Right, it's a very fine line between drawing an attractive woman and just all of a sudden now you're doing like TNA, you know what I mean? Because the arts, it gets carried away and falls into some sort of kind of gratuitous. Every art form does certain things really well, and and so animation, you can very easily move stuff around just to move stuff around, and there's an aesthetic to it that is really cool, and everybody turns their head, and their head goes down, and their eyes close, and they open, and it's like but it doesn't mean anything. And the thing with Brad is that whenever an animator would sort of do any sort of movement that was just an animation mannerism, he would be like, what is this? No one does this. What does it mean? I know, it's pretty if you do it, but you're destroying the acting in your scene, you know what I mean? And so we'll always like keep everybody honest to acting and to the truth of the characters and the moments, and completely like ban any all the grace notes that should not be there, if that makes any sense.
That's an amazing story. I love it. Yeah, do you still have your Will Eisner movie?
Funny you should ask. I put it on YouTube like 6 months ago.
Did you
I
really?
Watch that.
Oh, you got to send us the link.
It's easy. If you go on YouTube and you just look for my name, Stephan Franck, and The Spirit, and I think that's the first thing that pops up.
Oh, yeah, I'm watching that tonight. Tonight, Stephan, tonight.
Yeah, you will see that when I was 13 years old, the concept of shots cutting from one to the other totally escaped me, but that's okay.
That's a great story of working on the Iron Giant and the lessons you learned, and the fact that you didn't follow half of them.
That's right. Yes.
I love it. It's funny you mentioned the heavy metal, because growing up, when I was like 13, 14 years old, that was like literally my favorite movie. And that's what introduced me to Bernie Wrightson, when I learned that he did the
Captain Stern.
Stern.
Right?
Yeah. Great stuff. And he also did the zombie scene with them coming out of the plane.
I think actually that was William Stout, if I'm correct.
That was William Stout? I thought that was Bernie Wrightson.
No, I know it's a zombie. It feels very Wrightsony, but I think I may be wrong, but I think that thing was designed by William Stout.
Well, there you go. I believe you. Yeah, but that movie introduced me to Bernie Wrightson, and then I went back and found out about Swamp Thing, and I had watched the movie on Showtime when I was a kid for Bernie Wrightson. Didn't even know that was a comic book when I watched the movie.
Well, let me tell you this. No, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, it's all good.
No, I was just going to say, because you said you said on Showtime. I saw it in a theater with my mom. Can you imagine the awkwardness? And she was like,
"How was that Adrian Barbeau scene?"
Right.
You saw Heavy Metal with your mom in theater. So, funny, gross little story about Heavy Metal. In high school, my best friend, and I won't say his name, but
I thought you said Swamp Thing in the theater. I thought you saw Swamp Thing.
Oh,
in the theater.
no. I did
Heavy
not.
Metal.
No,
Heavy Metal. Yeah.
My friend, when he was like 13 years old, he admitted to me that he jerked it 8 times to that movie in a row. And I'm like, 1, why would you tell me this? And 2, oh my God, how raw were you?
Oh my God. Oh my God.
I think a lot of
story.
boys, probably preteen, were doing things to that movie, because the whole Tarna scene was ridiculous. I mean, did you see the South Park where they did the whole boobs thing?
No.
With Heavy Metal? Oh, it's pretty funny. Just look it up. Just look up South Park and Heavy Metal. It's a pretty funny. I like South Park, but I'm not a huge fan of South Park. Right. But that episode is really funny.
Yeah, I'll look it up.
You know what's cool about that movie, Johnny?
What's that?
I don't know if you realize this, but Silverdale Theaters. So we grew up in a little town called Bremerton, Stephan, which is on the peninsula. Like if you're in Seattle, Washington, you'd take a ferry over to Bremerton, and you would dock in Bremerton. We both grew up in Bremerton. But there's a little city on the other side called Silverdale, and they had a mall, and that's basically where everybody went for the mall and all that kind of stuff. And they had a pretty nice AMC theater back in the 90s and stuff. Well, as nice as it could be, I guess.
Yeah.
But every Friday night at midnight, they would play heavy metal.
Really?
And then after heavy metal, and then after heavy metal, they would play the Rocky Horror Picture Show. And that went on for like 10 years.
I did not know that.
Dude.
Yeah, then you'd go down there and you would see everybody in line getting dressed up like Frankenfurter,
Right.
and everybody else from that movie, but they would go in and they would play the heavy metal that would get everybody amped up, and everybody come outside, everybody smoke weed and drink some beers, and then go back in for the Rocky Horror Picture Show, and it was crazy fun.
Yeah, I mean, I believe it. You know, I heard that story that when I was working at Sony, so I don't know if it's true or not, but I heard, because for the longest time, you know, because the movie was released in 81, and then on and off it was on video, and I heard the story that tape, that VHS tape, was the most rented the most title. I can't speak anymore. The single most title, most rented. There's too many most in there, but you know what I'm saying? Like, of all the Sony, all the tapes in the Sony catalog, Heavy Metal was the one, the most rented title. The chestnut that would never move off the top of the chart, because all the big movies would come and go, and this one would just like the sleeper. It would never go anywhere. It would just stay there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, because when I worked in the video store, so there was two movies. Well, there's a few movies. That Heavy Metal, though, and the movie called Kids were the two most stolen movies out of my store.
Yeah.
Kids
all the time.
Fucked up movie.
It's a fucked up movie.
Oh yeah. Well, it was always kids stealing it too.
Right.
So like when you had, so that theater that had the double bill with Heavy Metal and the Rocky Horror Picture Show. So what was it? Was it, I'm assuming it was always the same people in the theater, right? Like
pretty much.
Right?
And then and what they would do is, I don't know if you've ever gone and seen the Rocky Horror Picture Show in a movie theater, and they still do this. You can still find this being done when people go and they get dressed up. And what happens is when certain lines happen, the audience reply.
Right.
Like, you know, when someone says, "Oh, Brad," everybody says, "Damn it, Janet," and then they go on, or they say, "Let's have a toast," and then everybody throws toasts at the screen. And the theater would provide you with toasts and everything else to make the movie interactive. It was really cool. And then if somebody was a virgin going, the first time going to the movie, then they got pulled up on stage underneath the screen and had to do the whole movie with people. It was pretty funny. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Yeah, I'm surprised you never did that, Johnny. I'm sure it went on until the early 2000s.
I just didn't know about it. I don't know. I was in that time frame of my life. I was in a band playing music and stuff and recording and playing shows. So I didn't go to movies a lot.
You were too cool for the Rocky Horror Picture Show, is what you're saying.
No, I was just too busy.
You were living it.
I was too busy playing bands, not getting paid. Living it, not getting paid to play music was awesome.
Yep.
So, Stephan, anything else new going on with the comic book world? Are you gonna concentrate on Silver, or do you have any new titles that might be gracing Dark Planet?
Yeah. So I mean, there's Silver 4, right? And I'm starting on now. I mean, it's already written, but there's a buttload of drawing to do on that one, because it's the end. It's going to be epic, and again, hopefully, we'll keep you guessing until the end. So
I'm sure you will.
Thank you. So I have this, and Rosalind is coming out, which I'm very, very, very excited about. So Rosalind, as you know, right, it's Sledge as a girl.
I can't tell you much that I really regret not picking that up at SDCC.
Well, you'll be able to get it from the website very, very soon.
Good.
It's a very special project to me. It's interesting because, I mean, everything I do, there's like a little bit of a meta aspect to it. Silver, for instance, there's the whole aspect of fatherhood, right? With Finn, who had a bad father, and now he's this guy who, of course, never planned to be a father in any way, and then finds teams up with this kid, and of course there's no really other way that this is going to go, that he's going to become a father figure for the kid.
You're right.
Right. And so you're sharing this thing about losing your father at an early age. So did I, and so I to me, and I was young enough that I feel like I never were able to connect with my dad as a man, right? And,
me too.
Right. And so I always had sort of like that
yearning.
This yearning, but also this anxiety of like, well, I feel like I've never been handed the father handbook. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so, like, the idea, this anxiety of, can I be a father? Or, will I know how to do that? So, and I have 3 kids. So, in a way, that like those type of truth, has to come into. So you do, because I always say that's my motto, is that we're in the business of telling universal truth, but in the weirdest way possible. And
I love that.
And in a way
That's
that
very true.
that's so right. So there's some truth in everything. But Rosalind took on this completely other level for me, because so I was to be honest with you, I didn't plan on writing that book right at that time. But as you've seen in your, because you have volume 3, and there's a flashback at some point, right? And without disclosing anything that's happening in there, but it opens the door, right? And into Rosalind's the mystery of her life, and where she came from, and how did she start down the road of becoming the woman you meet in Silver, right, as Sledge. And so I knew I wanted to tell that story at some point, but dude, I was on this business trip, so I was out of town, and for a movie, and this idea starts to come to me of what Rosalind is and what it is about, right? And the Van Helsing, and just to what John was saying, John, to your story, it's also like a generational thing, because I was like, okay, so what if the Van Helsings are a family, and from generation to generation, and what is this secret, this life that is getting passed on, and and what if one generation doesn't want it anymore, right? And also, in the traditional Dracula thing, Van Helsing is Jewish, right? And so I'm Jewish too, from on my mom's side, and so all my mom's side are coming from Eastern Europe, and had this, like, around the years that the story takes place, they were wandering Jews, from Eastern Europe, settling somewhere, and all of a sudden, and kind of settles in those bourgeois kind of life until, the place turned on them and they had to run again and stuff like that. And I started to, and my grandfather was called Abraham, like Van Helsing, right? So I was like out of town, and those ideas started to, so I was like, after, meetings and stuff, I would run back to my hotel room, and I had my laptop and my tablet and stuff, and I would start drawing and writing and drawing and writing, and a lot of really fun stuff. So, and the meta things kept coming. Like, for instance, I was like, if you were from a family of vampire hunters, right, trained from childhood and stuff, but you didn't want that life for your family, and you'd be sort of like, living in hiding, almost like a witness protection program kind of thing, right? You would move to a town, and so as you see, you see Sledge in Silver kind of fixing her own, like when she gets cut by a sword or something, she sews herself back on and stuff. And so, obviously Van Helsing would know how to fix any sort of wounds or physical problems. So he gets to a town, and people would say, "Oh, I need a dentist," and he was like, "Oh, you need a dentist? Well, come on in. Are you a dentist, right?" And so my grandfather was kind of like that, because they had to move from country to country so many times that his because I always say my ancestors were were practicing the dark arts of vodka making, professional gambling, and dentistry, right? and so, but his diplomas or whatever weren't legit, right? So from one country to the next. So then, people would say, "Wait, you're a dentist?" And I would say, "Nah, I'm a practitioner of the dental arts," right? Step in my office, and but it's a kitchen. Just step inside. And so I was like, "Dude, that's my Van Helsing, right?" And so, but he was a badass too. I mean, he eventually escaped twice from Auschwitz, and so like a lot of really crazy badass stories. So he kind of became my Van Helsing. And then my mom, was bad things happened during the war, and she ended up being a hidden child alone on the road, while the parents were, had disappeared and stuff. And so I was like, well, Rosalind, and I've heard all those stories from my mom, and I've digested sort of like the the meta truth of them, right? So of course we're talking about vampires and pulp and etc. But this girl who the world turns on her family, and now she's alone on the road, and she has to digest really horrible events. But like a child being in a position to process very intense events, but through those innocent eyes, I think that's fascinating. So in a way,
that's really fascinating,
right? So Rosalind became that. She became my mom, and then also there's a lot about sisterhood in that story. And I have two daughters, and I've seen them grow up, and I've witnessed sisterhood. And so it kind of becomes all that stuff. So I was alone in this strange town, in my hotel room, and just like when I came home, I had like 100 pages. I just couldn't stop. I was in this. It just became like this weird, like, and it's all told as her diary, like the journal of Rosalind Sledge Van Helsing, and it's just I don't know. It's maybe one of the purest, truest thing I ever did. It was really amazing.
That's amazing.
That makes me want to read that book even more. I mean,
yeah,
I want to read now.
And listening to your explanation on not only your life and your grandfathers and your moms and what they went through, because being like my whole family, we've been in America forever, right? So we have no way of, I mean, everybody can empathize to agree, but we have no way of understanding what your family had gone through. And it almost reads like a parallel of vampires as which would become Nazis.
Exactly.
And so now when I'm reading back, I'm looking at, I'm going to that makes, Stephan, this makes me want to go back and reread what I've already read, because now I have a different aspect of where you are coming from as reading those stories. And it's amazing. I'm excited to go home tonight.
Thank you.
And that's not a joke, man. That's
No,
really
no.
cool. You've opened up my eyes, because I didn't parallel that at all. And then now listening to your story, that makes me go, wow, there's so much more deeper going on. And this isn't just a normal con vampire story. You're giving insights into your family life, which is really, really neat.
Makes it more personal.
Yeah, thank you. No, I'll tell you something. It's interesting because I'm also from a generation that we haven't really had to struggle so far,
Right.
There's no, I was in the army, in France. I did my military service during the Gulf War, but I was not deployed. So I've never really, I can't say that I've known any real existential struggle in my entire life. I'm very
right there with you. Yeah.
Right. It's our generation. We're just lucky that way, but it's true that even people of my generation grew up with people who had living memory of how things can really, really go bad, and how society can really devolve into complete hell, and it happens very, very quickly, And again, I've never experienced it myself, but I grew up listening to those stories from the people who lived it. And so that's the thing that I noticed when I moved to America, and I'm an American citizen now, is that people were taking for granted the stability of the institution and the society and basically the civil society in a way that I thought was very, very optimistic. I mean, not optimistic, but very almost careless,
Yeah.
Right.
If you look everywhere here in the world, and you'll see that really, really horrible things happen to people, all the time. And it's on us to keep society civil and friendly and keep going the way it's been going, hopefully, better. But
recognizing language for what it is, and seeing when people say certain things, that fascism and it quickly devolves into chaos. And if you don't recognize it and say and call it out when you see it, then you're implicitly allowing things to happen. Genocide isn't a joke, and it happens still to this day. And when people don't speak up and just allow things to go on and don't talk about the value of I don't want to say race, but the value of separate cultures coming together, that's one of the things that makes this country is great, is the fact that you can have so many different types of cultures working together on something, and it comes out great. Like my work, I have a corporate job, if I could do this for the rest of my life, what we're doing right now, I would do
too.
it. Because I love talking with people. I love talking with people like you and that create and make content and create things that you can read and enjoy and love and pass on to somebody else and say, check this out. This is amazing, you know? But I'm lucky enough that I work in an environment where, you know, there's a rainbow of people here. I'm white, but the guy that sits next to me is from Iran, and the guy that sits next to him is from India, and the girl that sits next to him is from Korea, and it just goes on and on like that. And we all work together, and somehow everything comes out the way it's supposed to.
Yeah.
And I don't think when people don't, and I think you're right. I think people come through, especially here in America, and I think a part of it is that we're very much isolated. Even though we're a giant country, we're still isolated to the rest of the world comparatively. You know, you live in France. How long does it take you to get to England or go down to Germany or go to Spain?
It's a bus right away, you know.
Yeah.
You know, it's really interesting because, and again, it may be also the time period, but when I came to America was, you know, almost 25 years ago now. And I felt... Thank you. I felt like America was a much more open society for, you know, every place has its problem, but then let's say Europe or France for that matter. And I felt like racism, for instance, was really on the decline here, and in a way that was not quite the case yet in Europe, you know?
Yeah.
You know, it's very interesting. But, and for instance, here I live in LA, right, which is a very diverse, although it's true that it's still very segregated. At the end of the day, people go back to their different suburbs or places or whatever, you know.
Right.
But it is true that here I've become familiar with cultures that, you know, I did not know in Europe. You know, for instance, you know, just from top of my mind, Filipino is right. I never met anyone from the Philippines living in France, right? In LA, it's different. A lot of people from Asia, a lot of people from, of course, South America. So I love the melting pot we have here, and I think it definitely is our strength.
It makes life enjoyable.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, that's the point of story, which is that it lets you walk in other people's shoes. It's all about that. It's all about experiencing the world through somebody else's filter, and if you can do that honestly in story, I think you're doing your job. And that's that's what, we're always going back to truth in story, whether it's from a pose of a character that you're drawing, or whether it's like a truth on the completely meta level that has nothing to do with the, or sometimes it's just staying true to your character on a fictional level. But it's that character truth, is that's the value of it. And that's also what I love so much about comics, is that when you go to a Comic Con, right? The audience, it's probably one of the most diverse places that I ever go to is a Comic Con.
Oh yeah.
I cannot think of a more diverse place where, and as you've seen me at the show, so I talk with a lot of people one-on-one, I shake a lot of hands, and I have a lot of conversations with lots of people. And
yeah, you're very animated.
Right?
Good choice of word.
Yeah, I'm into it. Like, hey, how are you? Right?
Yeah.
But the truth is, because I really enjoy those interactions, and sometimes they get very emotional. Sometimes they're just pleasant and fun. Sometimes they get really emotional.
Yeah.
Man, I fucking love people. What can I say?
See, I do, as an artist, I do cons too, and I get tables in Artist Alley, and sell artwork and books that I've done. And I'm a very introverted person for the most part, but at cons, I love it because I step out of my zone and I talk to people about the stuff that I have, about what they're not necessarily just what's at my table, but I'll talk to them about the person across the table from me, or the person, what they're wearing, what they're doing, and just that interacting with people just is so much fun.
Yep. That's exactly right. You know what? At the end of the day, also, I'm gonna say, what I love about the cons is that they're judgment-free zones.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? Like it's like judgment and sarcasm is somehow, for a great part, suspended, and I think judgment is what kills everything.
Yep. Got to be open.
Yeah.
So, are you doing Emerald City?
Yeah.
Oh, you are?
You are. You're going to be up here for Emerald City.
Yep.
Awesome.
Oh,
That's our home. That's our home.
Awesome.
con.
Well-
we'll be there.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll definitely come by and say hello and everything. And
Yeah.
if you have time, I'd love to take you out and maybe get a couple beers or take you out to dinner at least to show you the city.
Well, I'd love to. So just
If you're available, I mean, I know you get busy going there, so it's an open invitation. Let's put it that way.
Well, I'll tell you, if we can swing it, I would love to.
Yeah, let's do it. So that'd be awesome.
Yep.
Well, dang, man, we've been on here for over an hour already. Can you believe that? We really appreciate you coming on, Stephan.
Yes, thank you.
Seriously. And anytime we are podcasting horrors and we love creators. So anytime you want to come on and tell it, or even just email us and say, hey, I got this coming out. Can you guys mention it on your next episode? We are more than happy to, anything we can do to help you out, to get your word out, to get your stuff out there. You let us know. We'll be more than happy to put it out.
Guys, I really appreciate it. I mean, it's been a really, really awesome conversation. I mean, it's really interesting.
Great.
It's got what you said early on. There was no sort of roadmap. We just went to interesting places, and I
love
it.
Yeah, it's much more fun that way.
Yeah, if I had a structure of questions, it's going to get, to me, it gets boring.
Real quick.
Because then it's like, yeah, da-da-da, but if we just leave it open, you don't know where you're going. Before we go, I just want to say thanks again.
Thank you for having me. So, yeah, it was a really fun time.
Thank you.
Okay. Wow, that was
awesome.
Wow. Yeah. That's an interview right there.
That's somebody who has good, I don't know, just
passion.
Yeah.
He's got a lot of passion, which really resonated through that whole thing. And I can't wait to have him on again. I want to go to Emerald just to hang out with Stephan.
Yeah. I mean, it's if we manage to have it, schedules sync up to where we can, take him out to dinner and just bullshit with him some more, that's going to be awesome. I mean,
that's going to happen.
I didn't say much in that interview because I was just in awe listening the whole time. But when he was talking about his grandpa in Auschwitz and the parallels of the book,
escaping
and the Nazis
from Auschwitz twice.
Right?
Come on, man. What the fuck, man? Are you kidding me? And then his mom going through that and her parents gone and she's got to live on the streets by herself and figure all that out. And then you start thinking about Sledge and Silver and the parallels of vampires and Nazis. It's like, holy shit, my mind was blown, dude.
It makes you want to read it all over again and then
definitely.
It again.
Definitely.
Now I'm kicking yourself even more for not getting Rosalind at SDCC.
Right?
I even told you should get this one. You're like, no, 3's enough.
Well, yeah, because I spent it was a good amount of money right off the bat. And we'd only been in the con for like a minute.
Yeah.
But I'm glad I got it. Now you're probably wishing you would have picked up those 3 volumes and have them signed.
I wish I would have. Yeah, I wish I would have bought all 3 of them for myself because now I don't have them. You have them.
Yeah, and they're all signed to Kenric, not even just Stephan Franck's, which I'm really happy that they're signed to me as an individual.
Right. They're yours. Yeah, it means more when you have a book. I think for me, it means more when you have the book signed to you because it's yours, it's personal, it's more than just a flat sign.
But he was such a nice guy at SDCC, but he was so busy that we only got to talk to him that first day, really, and then he would, and then we talked to the guy that he had helping him, the kid that he had helping him, and his wife a little bit.
Yeah.
But he was such a nice guy, and then to have that interview just happened. Like literally he just got off, and usually somebody will leave and then you and I will do an outro like a day later and then we'll talk about it and whatever. But we're so excited by that interview and what just happened. We were like, hit record, we're doing this.
Right. Let's get it done. Let's get it up.
Yeah.
That's a good interview. It's a good show.
Oh, that was an amazing time. A beautiful man that does doing some awesome work that I can't wait for volume 4. And kind of hinted.
I can't wait to have him back on again, honestly.
Yeah. We can't say that he said anything about them making a movie, but he did kind of allude that things are in the works for maybe some type of animation stuff.
Which, if it happens, yes.
Like I said, here's all my monies. Just take all my monies. Right. Just take it.
Kickstart that, and I'll be the first backer that as soon as I see it, I'll back it.
Right. Because, dang, man, that was, I don't know, we're gushing. That's all I can say.
We're gushing for a couple reasons. One, because we both loved the book, and two, it was such a pleasure to talk with him. And I don't know, if all of our interviews go like that, then I'll be a happy camper.
Right? Yeah. Well, he was such a great guy, and the story of making the Will Eisner. I mean, are you kidding? He creates his own he builds out a thing to hold the camera so he can make his own animated movie at 13 years old.
Yeah, it's already queued up. I already have it queued up on my phone to watch as soon as we hit stop.
That was so much fun, man. I can't even say enough. That was so much fun, and learned so much about what he's doing and how he does things. And I can't wait to see if he comes up with some more stuff besides the Silver Universe. And maybe he does a shared universe because he's got his own publishing company.
Right. Well, he said so. Volume 4 is the last volume of Silver, so maybe he's got something else planned for after that. Which, I mean, I'll follow it because I'm a fan. I'm on board.
Yeah. Well, reading through Volume 1, 2, and 3, it was the long con, man, and it got me at the end. I didn't see the way he wrote it. I didn't see it coming the way he ended it.
Yeah, as you said in the review in the first part of this episode, the book itself is just done like a storyboard. It's just done like you're watching a movie in your mind. It's so good.
Well, he coined it right? It's Ocean's 11 with vampires.
Right, perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. I was thinking the Italian Job, but that's a better explanation of it. I mean, and he sets it up like a movie. I mean, when you read those volumes, you're reading it through it, and it's just like. And I didn't want to say, I felt like at the beginning I was just kissing his ass so much, but he was so funny about it that I was just like, good, because I just want to get it all out there, so I'm done.
Right, get it all out.
Because his art is fantastic.
It's amazing, yeah, it's amazing art.
So one of the things that we're going to try to do is talk with Stephan and see if we can get a volume 1, 2, or 3 signed by him, so that maybe we can give it away like we have with our Copperheads and Tart.
Because ideally, our whole goal with these interviews and these reviews we do is to share the things that we love and then give somebody who listens a chance to get a copy of what we love to experience it themselves as well, to share the love around.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So I just want to give a shout out and a big thanks to Stephan Franck for coming on. We really appreciate it. That was an amazing time. It was a lot of fun. We can't wait to have him on again. Can't wait to go see him at the cons. And if you have a chance, check out Dark Planet. And I believe the website is dark-planet-comics.com. And you can get all his stuff there. And it's amazing. Go check it out. Read Silver.
Yeah, you can also get Silver on Comixology. And if you subscribe to Comixology Unlimited, you can read Volume 1. And
for free.
For free for subscribing to to the Unlimited plan, which I highly suggest if you have it. Your first order of business should be to go read this book. And you'll love it, I promise.
Yeah.
Make sure you follow us on social media. You follow us on Twitter, follow us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram. Just search Spoiler Country and any one of those and you'll find us. Feel free to tweet us with questions, with anything you want to talk about on the show. We're very active on Twitter. Both of us have access to it. We both respond. We kind of step on each other's toes sometimes and have some fun with it. Because sometimes he'll be liking stuff, I'll be liking stuff. All of a sudden we'll unlike each other's things. So, it's all fun. Make sure that if you want to be a part of that giveaway or any of our giveaways, you're following us on Twitter because we're going to tweet out about all of our giveaways there too, so you can enter all of them. Tell your friends, tell everybody you know. You can listen to us everywhere from Google Play to iTunes to Stitcher to SoundCloud to TuneIn. Everywhere that podcasts go, you can listen to our show. Give us a review.
That's not Tune Me, that's Tune In.
Yeah, not Tune Me, Tune In. Give us a review. We just got our first review on iTunes and it was great. So if you want to review us, shoot us a review, but make sure it's a 5-star review. If it's anything less than 5 stars, go ahead and email us and we'll make it a 5-star review with you somehow. We'll figure out a way to make you happy. If you do have constructive criticism, just email us, spoilercountry@gmail.com. We'd love to hear your thoughts. I think that's it. I think that's the show right there.
I think that's it. That'll do it. Thanks for joining. Thanks for listening. See you